I warned her, pleaded with her, even tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. And that's when I realized that sometimes patience is not strength. It is weakness. And if I didn't act, everything I worked for would be trampled into the ground. It began innocently enough, just cars from the nearby HOA subdivision cutting across my property to shave off a few minutes from their trip to town. I owned a wide stretch of farmland, mostly wheat and soybeans, and my land sat directly between their subdivision and the main highway, so the temptation was obvious. At first, I thought nothing of it. One or two cars driving over the edge of the grass was annoying but tolerable, but slowly it turned into a daily invasion. Dozens of vehicles rumbling across the field as if my crops were nothing more than weeds under their tires. I decided to be generous, even foolishly considerate, and cleared a straight dirt path for them so my seedlings wouldn't suffer. For a while, they respected that path. But arrogance has a way of spreading, and soon they began swerving again, veering into my fields, spinning mud and destroying my crops. It wasn't just the damage. It was the noise, the disrespect, the sheer entitlement. And no one embodied that arrogance more than Karen. She was the queen bee of the HOA, the woman who thought her rules extended beyond her manicured subdivision and into my private property. She drove a shiny black Escalade, oversized and overpolished, and she had this way of flooring the gas pedal like she was on a racetrack. She would laugh with her friends as they cut through my fields, blasting music, sunglasses perched like a crown, and whenever I confronted her, she'd brush me off with words that burned like acid. One evening I stood by the edge of the field, watching as her Escalade swerved dangerously close to my irrigation pipes. I raised a hand, hoping she'd stop just long enough for me to explain the damage she was causing. She rolled down the window, smirked, and said, "You can't tell me what to do on my road." My road. She had called it hers, as if the deed and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into tending this land meant nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, thinking of my crops that would never grow back, the financial loss, and the insult of being dismissed like a servant on my own land. Still, I tried one last attempt at diplomacy. I put on my best shirt, gathered pictures of the damage, and went to the HOA meeting. The board sat behind a polished oak table, sipping water from crystal glasses, looking at me like I didn't belong. I spoke clearly, showing them the photos, explaining the damage, pleading with them to instruct their residents to stay on the path or avoid my property altogether. They didn't take me seriously. Some chuckled about how a farm boy had dressed up for town. Others joked about the smell of hay that clung to me. And right in the corner, Karen sat back with her arms folded, smiling smugly as though my humiliation was entertainment. When I left that meeting, my ears were hot with shame, my fists clenched, and a decision burned in my chest. If they wouldn't respect my land by choice, then I would make them respect it by force. The rains came the next week, softening the soil into a heavy muck. While they slept comfortably in their homes, I was out there in the darkness with a shovel and lantern, carving out a deep trench across the very path Karen loved most. I filled it with mud, water, and a thick layer of manure until it blended seamlessly into the road, appearing nothing more than a harmless puddle. To the unsuspecting driver, it would look like just another muddy spot, but I knew better. I had built a trap designed for arrogance. And I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, like clockwork, I heard the familiar roar of her Escalade's engine. She came barreling down the path, one hand lazily on the wheel, the other holding her coffee cup, sunglasses reflecting the morning sun, completely oblivious to the fate waiting just a few feet ahead. The front tires hit first, dipping slightly, and she probably thought nothing of it. But within seconds, the massive SUV lurched forward, the ground sucking at the tires, the bumper scraping, the entire vehicle tilting at a sickening angle. She panicked, slammed the gas, and the wheels spun wildly, flinging mud in every direction, but the more she fought, the deeper it sank. Her shriek cut through the morning air, half fury, half fear, as the Escalade groaned and dipped until it sat buried up to the doors in muck. I leaned against the fence, arms crossed, and watched as she tried everything, rocking the steering wheel, honking, even climbing out only to have her expensive heels swallowed by the filth. She waved her phone in the air, searching for signal, her hair a frizzy mess, her designer clothes stained with brown splatters. Hours passed before she finally got enough reception to call a tow truck. When it arrived, the driver struggled to pull the beast free. Each yank scraping paint, denting panels, and tearing at the bumper until finally, with a horrible wrenching sound, the Escalade was dragged out, looking less like a luxury car and more like a war casualty. Her face was red, humiliated, and for the first time I saw silence instead of arrogance. But I wasn't done, because while she sulked and stormed away that day, I knew she wouldn't give up so easily. Arrogance like hers doesn't disappear with one fall, it grows vengeful. And I was ready for it. The fallout from Karen's downfall echoed through the neighborhood like a thunderclap. But instead of retreating, she doubled down, spreading rumors that the farmer had staged the whole thing and whispering to her few loyal followers that she was the real victim. The farmer, wise from years of patience, refused to fight back with anger. Quietly, he gathered photos, witness statements, and video evidence until he had enough to expose her. At the next HOA meeting, Karen strutted in wearing sunglasses and sneering at uneducated farmers. But her voice faltered when the projector lit up with footage of her trampling crops, yanking fences and dragging groceries through the farmer's rows. The silence in the room was deafening, and for the first time, her neighbors turned against her. A vote stripped her of all HOA authority, and Karen stormed out swearing revenge. But her obsession only grew darker. She began sneaking onto the farm at night, trying to intimidate him, until one evening she was caught on camera slashing his irrigation hose. Deputies arrived, and this time Karen faced charges of property damage and violating court orders. Her mugshot spread through town, shattering what little reputation she had left. The farmer, instead of gloating, turned the ordeal into a positive, opening his farm to local families and school children, teaching them about crops and livestock. Parents praised him, children loved him, and slowly the community rallied around his resilience. Meanwhile, Karen spiraled further, filing a desperate lawsuit claiming harassment, which the judge dismissed in minutes. Even her allies abandoned her, unwilling to be tied to her chaos. The worst punishment wasn't the fines or the arrests. It was the fact that people no longer feared her. They laughed at her tantrums, ignored her demands, and rolled their eyes when she tried to act powerful. Within months, her home went up for sale, whispers of foreclosure spreading, and on the day she drove out of the neighborhood, not a single person waved goodbye. The farmer returned to his fields, his crops thriving, his neighbors grateful, and the story of the HOA Karen became a local legend retold as a reminder that arrogance always meets its match. Justice in this case didn't come with shouting or revenge. It came quietly, through patience, truth, and the strength of a man who refused to bow to cruelty.